He slid a settlement across his desk with a gold pen and said, "Miss Hayes, you don't have legal representation. You don't understand contract law. Sign here and we can all move on. Fighting this will only cost you money you clearly don't have." He talked to me like I was ignorant, like I was cornered. What he didn't know was that I had been building a case against him for 6 months, and I knew contract law better than he ever would. My name is Gretchen. I'm 39 years old. I work as a compliance officer for a regional credit union. My job is to review loan documents, flag regulatory violations, and make sure consumer protection standards are met. It's not flashy work. Nobody claps for it. But it takes a sharp eye, patience, and a deep understanding of financial rules and contract law. I spend my days reading the fine print people hope no one checks. I grew up working class. My father was a union electrician. My mother managed a school cafeteria. I put myself through community college, then finished a 4-year degree in business administration with a focus on finance and law. I never went to law school, but I have read more contracts than most attorneys ever will. 2 years before all this happened, my father died. He left behind a small piece of commercial property, a strip of land with an old auto repair shop sitting on it. It wasn't glamorous, but it was paid off and brought in modest rental income. It was supposed to be my inheritance. My father worked hard for that little piece of land. He saw it as something solid, something safe. I wasn't a lawyer. I didn't have a framed degree on the wall or a corner office downtown. But I spent every day reading the exact kind of documents men like him rely on to confuse people. And he made the mistake of assuming I wouldn't read his. If someone ever tried to intimidate you with paperwork, if they used big words and legal jargon to make you feel small and powerless, subscribe to this channel. You're not alone, and you're not helpless. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had to fight back against someone who underestimated you. Click hype and let's get into this. 6 months after my father died, I got a certified letter from an attorney named Spencer Calloway. He represented a commercial development firm called Ridgeline Properties. The letter claimed my father had signed something called a pre-death transfer agreement, giving Ridgeline the right to buy the property the moment he passed away for $40,000. The property was worth about $175,000. I sat at my kitchen table and read the letter 3 times, then a 4th. I had never heard of this agreement. My father had never mentioned anything like it. I was the executor of his estate, and no such document had ever shown up in his files, not in his desk, not in his logbox, nowhere. I called Spencer's office right away and asked for a meeting. His tone over the phone was smooth and dismissive. "Just bring your ID and be prepared to sign. This is a formality. The contract is binding." At the meeting, he laid the contract out in front of me like it settled the whole world. That was the moment from the hook. Expensive suit, expensive watch, the kind of office that smelled like leather, stale coffee, and old paper trying too hard to seem important. The contract was dated 8 months before my father died and carried what looked, at first glance, like his signature. Spencer folded his hands and said, "I understand this is difficult, but your father made a business decision. The law is clear. You can hire an attorney if you want, but you'll just rack up fees fighting a contract that is already enforceable. My advice? Take the $40,000 and move on." I asked to take a copy home. He laughed. Actually, he laughed. "There's nothing to review. It's standard boilerplate. But sure, you've got 2 weeks to respond before we file for specific performance." That night, I sat under my desk lamp with the contract spread out in front of me and started reading the way I always read. Slowly, precisely. The signature was close, but not right. It had the shape of my father's name, but not the pressure or rhythm. Then I checked the notary stamp. The notary's license had been suspended 3 months before the document was supposedly signed. I checked the witness signature next. Illegible. No printed name. No traceable identity. That alone was enough to make me colder. Then I pulled my father's medical records. On the day the contract was allegedly signed, my father was in the hospital recovering from surgery. Sedated. Under observation. He couldn't have been sitting at some office table signing a property transfer. He handed me a fraudulent contract like it was scripture. He thought I'd be too scared or too ignorant to check. But I had spent 12 years reading documents. People lie on. And this one was a forgery. A bad one. I sent Spencer a formal letter outlining every discrepancy I had found. The suspended notary. My father's hospitalization. The suspicious signature. I requested that Ridgeline withdraw the claim immediately. He didn't respond like a man caught in a lie. He responded like a bully who got challenged. He filed a lawsuit seeking specific performance, trying to force the sale under the terms of the fake contract. His cover letter came with the filing, and it was pure intimidation. "Your baseless accusations are noted and will be used against you. Fraudulent resistance to a legal contract can result in sanctions and attorney's fees. I suggest you retain counsel immediately, though I doubt you can afford anyone competent. I remember reading that line and feeling my heartbeat in my throat. Not because I believed him, because I recognized what he was doing. He wanted fear to do the work the facts could not. Then he started attacking my reputation. Quietly, strategically, a colleague at the credit union pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "Hey, I heard you're involved in some legal trouble. Someone said you're fighting your dad's estate or something." I just stood there. Spencer had begun telling mutual business contacts and people in my professional circle that I was refusing to honor my father's last wishes and dragging out a legitimate business transaction with frivolous claims. It spread exactly the way rumors always spread. Softly, indirectly, just enough to stain. I had built my career on being careful, honest, and exact. Now people were looking at me with cautious curiosity, like maybe there was a side of me they hadn't known. Then his court filing got worse. He submitted additional documents to support the contract. An email supposedly from my father confirming the deal. An affidavit from a Ridgeline executive claiming my father had verbally agreed to the sale in advance. The email was fake. I knew it instantly. My father barely used email at all, and he would never have handled property matters that way. The affidavit was vague, slippery, and conveniently impossible to test, but Spencer filed it all with complete confidence, and the judge set a preliminary hearing. That was when I made the decision that changed everything. I was not going to hire a lawyer. Not because I couldn't, because I realized I could do this myself. I knew evidence standards. I knew procedure well enough to learn the rest. I knew how to build a file. So I started building one. I pulled the notary suspension records. I subpoenaed hospital records. I tracked down the company listed as witness on the contract and found it didn't exist. Never had. Then I hired a certified forensic document examiner to compare the signature against real samples of my father's handwriting. He thought I'd crumble under legal pressure. He thought I'd be too intimidated to fight. But he forgot one thing. I was not a victim. I was a compliance officer. And my whole job is catching people who lie on paper. What Spencer Calloway never knew, what he never bothered to ask, was that I had spent over a decade reviewing loan files, spotting forged signatures, flagging altered documents, and reporting violations to federal regulators. Compliance work teaches you something valuable. Fraud is lazy up close. It wants your fear to do most of the lifting. My role had given me an almost obsessive understanding of contract enforceability, notary requirements, witness standards, and evidence authentication. I had testified in 3 federal audits. I had identified more than 40 fraudulent loan applications over the course of my career. I knew how to organize a case so clearly that the facts told the story by themselves. I also held multiple professional certifications in anti-fraud detection and legal compliance. Spencer never asked about any of that because in his mind, compliance officer probably meant glorified paper pusher. He was wrong. I had access to professional resources he did not expect. Forensic document examiners I had worked with before. Database access to notary records. Legal aid attorneys who respected my work enough to answer procedural questions for free when I got stuck. Over the next several months, I cross-referenced every claim Spencer made, documented every inconsistency, and drafted every response myself using public court templates and my own knowledge. He filed a lawsuit expecting me to fold. He submitted fake documents expecting me to accept them. But I had been catching fraud for 12 years. And I was about to show him what happens when you try to scam someone who actually reads the fine print. There was one person I trusted enough to bring fully into the fight. Margaret Lindell, my former supervisor at the credit union. She was 62, brilliant, steady, and one of the least intimidatable people I had ever met. By then, she worked as a senior compliance consultant for a national financial watchdog organization and had testified as an expert witness in over 20 federal fraud cases. When I told her what Spencer had done, her voice went sharp immediately. He forged a contract and filed it in court? That's not just fraud, Gretchen. That's prosecutable. And you've got every tool you need to bury him. Margaret reviewed my evidence pro bono. She helped me tighten the structure of my exhibits, connected me with a handwriting analyst she trusted, and reminded me of something I almost forgot under the stress. You've caught people lying on documents your whole career. This is no different. Don't let the suit in the office intimidate you. He's just another fraud. And you're better at this than he is. Meanwhile, Spencer's arrogance got worse. He filed a motion for summary judgment, asking the judge to rule in Ridgeline's favor without even going to trial. His position was simple. The contract was facially valid, and I had produced no credible evidence to challenge it. A contact later told me he bragged to a colleague, "This woman thinks she can play lawyer. She'll embarrass herself in court, and will have the property by the end of the month." Ridgeline's CEO was already making plans to demolish the old auto shop and redevelop the land. He filed for summary judgment because he thought the fight was over before it began. But by then I had the forensic report, the hospital records, the notary suspension records, the witness company search, and a 47-page response with 16 exhibits. The hearing was in 10 days, and he had no idea what was coming. The courtroom was small and plain, all fluorescent light and dull wood, the kind of room where nobody looks powerful for very long. Spencer arrived in a tailored suit with a young associate carrying boxes of files behind him. I sat alone at the other table with one accordion folder, my laptop, and a legal pad. He glanced at me, smirked, and whispered something to his associate. They both chuckled. I said nothing. The judge came in. We stood. Then it began. Spencer went first, smooth and confident. He summarized the contract as valid, binding, and enforceable. He submitted the contract, the alleged email, and the affidavit as supporting exhibits. Listening to him, you would have thought this was routine, clean, simple, done. Then the judge turned to me. "Miss Hayes, do you have a response?" I stood up, opened my folder, and said, "Yes, Your Honor, I do." I started with the notary stamp. I submitted the state licensing board's suspension record showing the notary's license was invalid on the date of the alleged signing, then the signature. I handed up the forensic handwriting analysis from a certified examiner concluding that the signature on the contract was inconsistent with authentic samples and likely fraudulent, then my father's hospitalization. Authenticated hospital records. Time-stamped. Admitted. They showed my father was sedated and recovering from surgery on the exact day he supposedly signed the agreement. Spencer stopped smirking. Then I addressed the email. I had metadata analysis, showing it had been created months after my father's death from an IP address traced back to Ridgeline Properties office network. The room changed at that point. You could feel it. Then I presented business registration records showing the listed witness company did not exist and had never existed in the state. The judge's face went from neutral to visibly alarmed. I closed with the only statement that mattered. "Your Honor, this is not a contract dispute. This is fraud. Mr. Calloway knowingly submitted falsified documents to this court in an attempt to steal my property. I am requesting not only that his motion be denied, but that this matter be referred to the State Bar and the District Attorney's Office for investigation." Spencer stood up too fast. "Your Honor, these allegations are. I was provided these documents by my client." The judge cut him off. "Counsel, you have a duty to verify the authenticity of the documents you submit." Motion denied. I am ordering an evidentiary hearing and referring this matter for further review. We are adjourned. That was it. Spencer's face lost all color. He started gathering papers with shaking hands. His associate avoided looking at anyone. I closed my folder, packed my laptop, and walked out of that courtroom without looking back once. 2 months later, the State Bar opened a formal investigation into Spencer Calloway's conduct. Ridgeline Properties quietly withdrew every claim and settled with me for $50,000 in damages and legal costs because they did not want more scrutiny. Spencer was suspended from practicing law for 18 months and fined $25,000 for submitting fraudulent evidence. His reputation in the legal community collapsed. I sold the property later on my own terms for $178,000, more than 4 times what he tried to force me to accept. I used part of the money to fund a scholarship in my father's name for first-generation college students studying business and law. That felt right. He believed in practical knowledge, in earning your place, in not being pushed around. Margaret wrote me a recommendation letter that helped me land a senior compliance role at a state regulatory agency. It was a real promotion. Bigger scope, better pay, more authority. I framed the court order denying Spencer's motion and hung it in my home office. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. I still keep a copy of the fraudulent contract in a drawer. Every time I review a file at work, I remember exactly what that paper taught me. Fine print matters, and the people hoping you won't read it are the ones who should fear you most. He wore a suit and carried a briefcase and thought that made him untouchable. But I read the contract, I check the facts, and I beat him with the one thing he never respected: the truth. If someone ever used legal language to intimidate you, if they handed you a document and hoped you wouldn't read it, or told you that you didn't understand the law so you should just give up, I want to hear from you. You don't need a law degree to fight back. You need the truth and the courage to use it. Subscribe and share your story in the comments. Click hype to help the story reach others who need it. If this story resonated with you, please give it A like and click hype to help it reach more people who need to hear it. Your voice matters in our community, especially if you've ever been told you couldn't win because you weren't a lawyer, weren't educated enough, or didn't have power. Share your own experience in the comments below. I'm reading every single one.